G'day guys. Been working on a few of these 7000s recently, and we've had some dongle issues, but this is a different one. This one has been dropped, okay, and it was working perfectly. And if I turn it on, I'll let it, I've got it on my audio amp so we can hear it. I'll go through this. Okay, so I'll hit detect, and it will do death by 1,000 cuts. So if you drop it and it makes that noise, it's probably the worst fault you can get. It's actually detecting the coil, but we have a data issue, and there's something a little bit NQR, as in not quite right. I'll turn that off. Everything seems to check okay. I've gone through, your data comes in from the dongle, ends up on the board facing down, goes through the connector plug, comes out on pin 32, and goes through a resistor capacitor network, probably a little bit of shaping there, and filtering, shaping, filtering, whatever it does. I didn't design it. I don't know what the intention is, but I haven't looked at the data going in and out, and as far as I can tell, it looks clean. So maybe it's just filters. And then it runs through a very small one of these surface mount resistors. Which one it is? It's one of those anyway, and goes straight under that IC, which is a BGA ball grid array type chip, and it doesn't have legs as per se. It has lots of little balls or little connections all the way under the chip. Whatever's under that, it could have 128 connections, whatever. And I would say that under there we probably may have a fracture, but if it didn't detect the coil with the correct data, the detector should shut down and say no coil. At the moment, we have overload, and a picture of the coil and a round red circle with a cross in the middle of it. So that is what we have. I've been over the board, doing a lot of the test points on the board and just comparing it. What I've done is I've actually got a fully working 7000. I've made up a truth table of all the test points and anything of interest. I know what's meant to be at these points, and everything looks like it's running fine. All the power supplies are up. We've got correct voltage rails, and it keeps pointing to that big IC. That one there, that is the hearts and guts of this detector. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to say the least. The fellow who owns this made a phone call. I'm getting this second hand off Dave, but the fellow, that's why Dave brought these detectors around yesterday. And I've got another one over there that's been dongle damaged. But anyway, we'll get into that. So what we've got at the moment is electrically, according to testing, that it looks okay, but it's not okay. So it's going to be a really curly fault. This could even be one of the internal, copper PCB traces, because these are multi-layer boards, and it could be inside the multi-layer board. And in that case, you can't fix it. But anyway, I'll get back onto what was said to the customer. Customer, to the best of my knowledge, this is what was said because it was conveyed very quickly to me. So I believe it's probably very accurate. And very accurate in my opinion. How's that? Right, just in case. But the fellow involved, he called Minelab themselves and he said, this has happened to my detector and it's doing this. And they said, sight unseen, it could cost up to $7,000 to repair, which I would say that, to me, in my opinion, is replacing the main boards. That is my guess. So be aware of that. Don't drop your detector. I don't know if it was dropped from a great height, but what normally happens with these detectors, and this is, you all probably do it, is when you're out prospecting, you get back to your car and you open up the back part of your car to put all your gear in there, and you stand the detector up leaning against the car. I've done this, and what actually happens is that the car's nice and shiny paint. The detector's very, very top heavy because it's got the battery connected, and it just falls over and hits the ground with a hell of a lot of momentum because you've got a big, with the head unit, the battery and the top part of the detector all going over from whatever the length is. You could probably go and work out if you want the weight and the length, and apply gravity to it, that it'll come down like a sledgehammer. It'll smack the ground so hard, and lucky the screen didn't break. That's what usually happens on these. It breaks the screen. Any detector breaks the screen. You'll start, if you do damage, you'll start seeing it go a purpley colour in the corners of the glass, or maybe right in the middle of the screen. Depends where it breaks the seal and air gets in. And that's a real nuisance. So this is, been dropped, and there's a lot of things I can attempt to try and fix this, but it's a big risk. There's always a risk with this sort of stuff, and the main thing is time consuming, trying to track out what is gone wrong. Because it's been dropped, it's going to be a basically, I would say it's going to be a broken track, a break inside the board where it's flexed on impact, something of that nature. So I've tracked it all the way through, and it does go to the CPU. We'll call it a CPU. What do you want to call it? MPU, whatever you want to call it. It basically is looking pretty sad at the moment. So I did put a bit of time in on this last night, but yeah, I had to put it off for a bit. I had some other 5045s and things to do, and I want to try and knock this over because these things can take up a lot of time, and it doesn't allow me to get the other work done. But we'll see what happens. So this is the sad sorry saga. If I do cure it, what I'll do, I'll put up another video and showing what the fix is. Now you might see here too that the way I've got this set up, normally I split the case and take the head unit out and have everything sitting on the bench, but because the bench has got so much stuff on it at the moment, I didn't bother. And I've got it set up in a particular way that you don't want to stress out the mylar here. This is upside down, connects in from underneath. Don't break the mylar, it'll be a nightmare. It'll cost you, I bet you it costs a fortune to get a new one. Right? I don't know. I've never bought one. I'm only guessing, but I think it would cost a fair bit. It'd be an absolute pig of a thing to replace because it's got so many connections on it that it goes into the interface for your wireless module and all sorts. But um, like this, you can work on it, and when you want to work on the other side, you have to reposition everything and flip it over. And just so this doesn't go sliding off onto the floor and rip the mylar in half and make a complete utter mess. That's why I've got a little vise down here, a little Chinese vise. I think it was $3.48 or something, whatever it was, and a piece of plastic irrigation for micro watering in the vise, and that just holds that detector. Just basically, it's not going to slide far. If it did, it'd fall on my knees, but I don't want it falling off the bench because that would be a disaster. So always, when you work on these in this predicament, anchor it so it can't go anywhere. If you have one of these and it just wants to fall down, it is going to wreck everything. You don't want that to happen. You want to mitigate that from ever happening. So that is the story with this. Um, and yeah, it's a bit of a sad one at the moment. So yeah, Bill, this is your detector. I'm not saying your last name, but Bill's detector. Um, but yeah, we're going to give it our best shot because in past history of customers that have had damage to their main boards, Minelab do not, as far as I know, in my opinion, repair them. They replace. And in this case, it would be a very, very hefty bill if what Bill told David is on the money. I don't know. I wasn't party to the conversation. Just that I've got to be careful. I'm very careful in what I say because um, I've had it in the past. You say something, and you know some threatening legal lecture. Legal letter. Clear the throat. Turns up and says you said this about that. Um, whatever. But like I say, all my input on this stuff is opinion. Okay, all my own personal opinion, and even the repeat stuff I repeat from customers or third hand sounds like a logical opinion from me. So I'm not glossing it or anything like that or saying untruths. I'm just passing it on as it is. So be wary of your detector doing the big slide off the side of your car and smacking on the ground. Yeah. Well, there's other cases where it's been even worse. I've had, actually had a couple of people that put their detector down on the ground, thought they put in the car and ran over it, backed over the detector, and perfectly aimed on the control boxes. That one was recoverable, didn't go all the way and smash the board. One did smash the board to pieces, and the other one was quite good. That it was only an SD 2200, but the fellow leant it up against a tree and drove all the way from where was he? Oh, he was in Chute up near Beaufort, and went all the way back to Melbourne and realised that he left his detector up against a tree, so it stayed there. I think overnight the next day, and he drove when he finished work. He drove back up there; it was still sitting there. So fun and games in the detecting game, eh? Yeah, but yeah, even better. I've had detectors from the Queensland floods. Spent 3 weeks underwater. Came in full of mud, and yeah, because it was the water was not salt water; it was just fresh water, and there was no oxygen. Nothing chewed out. So pull it apart. I gave it a bit of a clean with the pressure washer actually on the boards because you've got to get under all the ICs. And yeah, not like full bore pressure washer, but I gave it a pressure washer, and then I gave it an ultrasonic clean in. I actually put isopropyl alcohol in the ultrasonic cleaner. I didn't want to use water, get the water out of it, and then I dried it in the oven at about 80 degrees Celsius, and I turned it on. It worked fine. So, yeah, water damage. As long as the battery is not connected. In one of these, if you fill this up with water, and even if it was turned off, I think it would fry it, because it would sense the battery power still goes in, and it just has electronics sensing the battery, turning the battery on and off. But I'd say that most of it's probably live, and it will chew these out. So never ever leave these wet with the battery connected. Same goes for mobile phones. If you can get the battery off, not that you can nowadays, if you drop it in a puddle, yeah, get the battery out ASAP, because it will cause a lot of corrosion, chew circuit tracks out, and it would probably do the same. And that was Chari sneezing. So that's the 7000, and I better get into it. So I'm just putting this up here as this is just an example of a dropped detector, and we will attempt to repair it. I have a number of ways to do it. I just don't want to go into the real hard and fast ways of doing it, just in case it destroys any chance of being a unrecoverable or being a recoverable repair. And if you do anything really drastic, you can turn it into an unrecoverable repair. And yeah, so we're going to try and save this fellow from yeah, a nightmare of a possibly you know, replace the board scenario. We don't want to do that if we can help it. So I will go through it. I'm going to get out my documents with all my extended truth tables, where I've actually done pin measurements on various ICs. The only one you can't do is this. There's a number of test points here, which you can have a look at some of the functionality of the main CPU, MPU, processing unit, whatever you want to call it. And we'll just see how we go. But fingers crossed that we can get on top of this. Fingers crossed. Anyway, catch us.